Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Inforunners Live. And thank you to DePal for this beautiful overlay. Guys, we're doing something different. I'm Dasein was here.
And this is Hayes. And today we're going to be talking about wormholes again. We're revisiting it. We've had a number of user comments on our wormholes episode, and they've brought new ideas to the table that we hadn't considered and even sort of thought about. So we're going to be bringing a number of different comments about wormholes, and we found that these different comments from different users actually start to mesh together into sort of a new, fresh take on how wormhole sizes and ships interact.
Yes, and guys, thank you very much for your comments. We read them all. We love them. And in this episode, if your comment was not picked, we just picked a couple 4 comments right now that we wanted to talk about. There were several others that led into this, but just in the sake of brevity, let's get started with the comments that we chose. So, the first 3 comments we're going to read out are going to relate to the overall mesh of theory, and we are putting them up here on screen. The first one is by Wombat1. I need to watch this again, but I think you need to take in consideration the length of ships as well, not just the front cross-section. All of the visuals released by CIG shows the ships weaving in and out around sections of a pretty complex structure. And they do mention quite a few times that you need to be a skillful pilot. I had not considered the option of collapsing a large hull transporter to make a shorter round trip. So keep the ideas flowing. The next comment is going to be by Jamie Rowland. A few points I may be misinformed, but here it goes anyway. Didn't CIG originally say that navigating the wormhole would be the challenge? Sure, you may be able to fit a bigger ship in, but all the geometry you have to evade while doing so is why bigger ships would make it. Which would also counter your point on the length of ship, since the length of the ship would directly impact maneuvering through hulls. The hulls are all wibbly-wobbly with geometry jutting out. It is not simply a doorway. At least that's what I took away from the tech demo they put out a while back. There is a link, and when we release this on YouTube, we'll be definitely putting that link in for you guys to go check out. Other than that, I love the videos, especially the voices. You guys are easy to listen to. And the final point, Hayes, I'd like you to read this one.
Yep. Just going a quick cap off the 2 ones that we were just given is the idea that wormholes, maneuverability, and sort of the ability for the ship to maneuver through, that sort of, comes together. But this is the one that sort of clenches the idea. This one is from Adrian Miller. Just found your channel and I'm so happy I did. Speaking on jump points, it really wouldn't make sense for a Carrack not to be able to fit through medium jump points. Also, I had a thought that's kind of been in the back of my mind for a few months more. What if the terms small, medium, and large jump points maybe are just wasted to describe how stable a jump point actually is? Like, what if not the physical size of the ship matters? Like, you can jam an issue or a ship through a small jump point, but you have a 0.1% chance of making it through without collapsing it. Then a medium is like mostly stable, and the large is like super stable with an almost 0 chance of collapsing. Then it becomes based on things like EM output and stuff like that. Just my thoughts. Keep up the good videos. Now, I like the idea of jump point stability being a sort of factor, and that based on small, medium, large jump points have a stability rating. And so it comes up with, it leads with the idea that jump points are unstable and that sometimes they collapse, disappear, and new ones reform and are different. And because you've got the careers where you search for jump points no one's found, and sometimes jump points will disappear and sort of reform, and it gives you also the idea that you have people who professionally map jump points so that they know a clear path for other people to navigate in, and this sort of reinforces that idea.
The thing
but
is,
it also
this paints a picture of a completely unified theory from all of these comments and what we were talking about, where you're looking at the jump points on the arc star map are probably your stable jump points, where you have those that are, yes, they're small, medium, and large, as in cross-sectional wise, and maybe what ships that can fit in them based on our previous episode. But there's going to be other jump points out there, maybe even certain ones of those jump points, which will have different stability ratings, which will mean how wibbly-wobbly they are, and maybe even chance of collapsing, which is going to make it so just because in some small jump points you can fit a Connie or a Retaliator, there are going to be other ones out there that you cannot fit that Connie or Retaliator without it destroying the ship or destroying the jump point itself.
Well, even if you take the idea not so much that you collapse a worm point, but based on how dangerous it is, like a small jump point may be such dangerous that it has so many obstacles that a large ship getting through there has a very low chance of surviving getting through there. It gets the idea that depending on a mix of maneuverability, sort of the cross-sectional size and length to maneuver through that, and you could stick a large ship through a medium jump point. It'd just be unlikely that you'd get there unscathed. You'd probably be highly damaged, or perhaps even lose your ship completely during the traveling through the wormhole. And this opens up a really interesting idea that going through jump points requires skill, and it has consequences. And this, I can bet my money on that there's going to be people who will love testing the limits of their piling capacity to bring ships that are not rated to go through these smaller jump points, just to see if they can, just to test and push the limits of what is actually possible.
Well, and along with this also makes the whole series collapsing even more vital, because if you're in a jump point that's extremely unstable, you're going to want to be collapsed to get through, and it may allow whole series to go through point A to point B. But overall, I really think that when you look at the Arc Star map, the jump points that you see there, I feel like are going to be stable and follow more or less the theory that we originally laid out. But what we're talking about with jump point stability and with a lot more of the maneuvering is probably going to be for more of the explorable, the findable jump points, because they're not necessarily going to be your stable super highways. Because if they make it too difficult, it is going to really exclude a certain part of the population from certain roles.
Well, it makes a lot of sense that the large jump points are always like essentially a highway. They're always stable. You can get everywhere with large jump points within, but it might take a really long time to get around there. So it's a stable sort of highway. Well, you think the small ones as the offbeat dirt road tracks that, large vehicles would get clogged down on and have difficulty navigating through, except when you put this level of risk involved and sort of it builds up that sort of tension. So you say, there's no way I'm taking my ship through there because, I'm going to take heavy damage or I might lose it altogether. And so instead of artificially limiting ships, you end up, it's more of a judgment call as to whether you're willing to take the risks or lose your ship completely. This brings a lot more gameplay elements, interesting gameplay, endgame sort of content that the previous systems, the idea that you have it fits or it doesn't, or whether or not based on mass, which we've had more people talking about mass fitting through a jump point, and that would be a determining factor. I forget whether that's Eve or I think that's how Elite Dangerous does it, maybe?
There's several games that have done mass, and mass in itself is unique because you then have the idea of, well, do I load my ship to the brim or do I not load it to the brim? Do I maybe cut some parts off here? And in some ways, it also makes it easier because you can take like all the ships that you see, like an image that you have right now that's up, in a bucket and just start throwing them in. Like, this fits here, this fits here, this fits here. The problem with that is it doesn't add as much interesting dynamic gameplay as saying you can either fit it in here or it's going to be affected by the stability and how well you can maneuver. And So mass is a possibility in some ways because who knows, maybe that may even affect instability too, because you might have all the theories out. You never know.
Yeah, it could be a mix of everything. Why pick one? You can have everything. But it does sort of blow out the idea that initial idea that a cross-sectional one, I think it will be a mix of all those things. I think if they're smart and they want sort of content people come back to over 10 years, they would make this interesting concept where it's a mix of you can take safe routes and it doesn't require too much skill, so everyone can do it. And then if you want to push the envelope and sort of really sort of challenge yourself, they'll give you this other option.
Yes, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. And now for the final comment we wanted to talk about. I'm just going to say right off the bat, this one's a doozy. I'm going to start reading it, and then I'm going to paraphrase a little bit and probably start reading it again because we don't want to be here all day. But he has some amazing points. So, John Turpak, thank you for this comment. It's well thought out. And just to give a little bit of context, what he is talking about is when we were talking about the whole series, the Hull E collapse, offloading its cargo, collapsing, going through a jump point, reassembling, and then having all that cargo reloaded back on. And he points this out and words this in a much better way. So, let's get started. The concept that you're looking for here is cross-docking. That is the technical term for how this sort of thing is handled in real world transportation sector. Say you live in Tallahassee and you want to send a package to Seattle. Your package does not get on a truck and get sent straight to Seattle. Instead, your package will get put on a truck and sent to a hub in Atlanta. At this hub, your package will then be grouped together with a bunch of other packages that have come to the hub from the surrounding region and are heading in the same general direction. So basically what he's saying is you're going to get more of a transportation sector that is going to end up being, you have a package heading somewhere, your whole series is going to go there, drop it off at the hub, probably get more packages unloaded to whatever direction you're heading to, and then those packages will go through the smaller jump point, which is going to be more efficient, and then get loaded to another hub, and then loaded onto a larger ship. And Hayes, we'll finish out the second section.
Okay. The second part of his thing says, in my mind, the size of jump points is pretty much irrelevant. The Hull series could be used to run big loops around the system through the big jump points. Hubs along the way would allow cargo to be transferred to smaller ships for delivery via smaller jump points. The freight loops would be as regular as bus routes. This would make them predictable targets for vermin, but it would also make them easy to defend, and put the hubs near medium and small jump points and let the smaller cargo ships carry and freight across the points to the hubs on the other side. There it can be loaded back onto Hull ships as part of another freight loop or sent out for local delivery. This opens up a huge source of income for smaller vessels, as well as people who run the hubs. There can even be competing hubs in areas. I see these hubs as areas becoming the boom towns of the game, but that's assuming the devs are building towards such a system. If they just make it so that cargo ships pick up and deliver their cargo all on their own, then it will be far more difficult and less lucrative than it could be. This is really interesting because, like on one end, you have a large organization taking a Hull E up to a small jump point, actually dropping it off at a cargo hub, and then having a whole bunch of smaller ships quickly ferry it through the wormhole to another cargo hub that's been set up, like a space station or something. And then that station will then load it back onto a second separate Hull E that will then complete the rest of the journey. Therefore, it's sort of bypassing a very large amount of chain of different wormholes it would have to take otherwise. I can see large organizations doing this just from getting point A to B as a sort of a organized group. So they'd be piloting those large ships, and at the hubs you'd have a swarm of small ships quickly ferrying from, one side of the jump point to the next. But maybe, they could do this on the NPC side as well.
Yes, which is a unique idea of human players or orgs literally hiring groups of NPCs to help do the menial labor. But that would also, in some ways, help orgs out. Let's say you have a pure military org and they want to introduce into some cargo. It allows them to maybe hire NPC cargo people, and then they'll do the escorting. but it's their cargo which they paid for. So they're just giving them a transport fee, but they're actually getting the profit from actually the trading itself. It also opens up another angle, which is all the people are concerned, the big ships are going to drown out all the small ships. If you're having hubs like this, it gives jobs for everyone and jobs that are well paying for everyone, not just your big orgs or big cargo haulers.
Well, that's right. You have hull E's and hull A and B's working in tandem together as a team. And hopefully the mission system will allow you to say, I need a hull A to help move this cargo from this hub to this hub. And hopefully the NPCs will be able to take up that job as well as real people. And so they're all part of the loop of this sort of hub transportation system that ultimately goes from a hull, E through to a transportation hub to a whole bunch of smaller vessels and back up to the hull E. And that by having an org being able to set up these subcontracts for smaller vessels, like, a small moving trucks like you'd have in the real world, hopefully if they do this right, this will be a thing. And that means, the hull E and the hull A and B's will be just as valuable as each other. They're a different part. It's like using the right tool for the right job.
Yes, and again, this also all these ideas here also lend to the other idea that yes, CIG has said that the human players are a small portion of the world, and you're not necessarily going to make as big of an impact as let's think Eve, where your orgs are everything. But if an org can run the most efficient hubs in an area, that in itself could give an org a impact without crowding everyone else out in that scary monopoly, while still giving them a meaningful impact.
I think they have a huge opportunity to get this right, with the idea that NPCs will be able to take on missions that that real players give, and vice versa. If they do this right, this sort of a setup will be very, very interesting. So, guys, did you like or sort of format where we take ideas that people have brought to the table, these new ideas, and then trying to mesh them together and then talking about this? Would you like us to answer more viewer questions that we have? Because we get a lot of them, and if you like this, please tell us in the comments whether you want to see more of it.
Guys, and again, thank you very much. We read your comments, and if you did not get selected, please don't feel bad. You may get picked out again. Keep commenting. You might get mentioned out on stream. So, guys, thank you all for watching, and as always,
catch you around in the verse.
Catch you around.